and I'm 34 years old. My family just uninvited me from Thanksgiving dinner because they said my divorce would embarrass them in front of the relatives. So I decided to throw my own celebration at my new $2.1 million home, complete with 29 guests who actually appreciated my company. When those photos hit social media, well, let's just say my phone hasn't stopped ringing since. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt like the black sheep of your family. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next, because this story involves hidden fortunes, federal crimes, and a betrayal so deep it came from the person I trusted most. What you're about to hear changed everything I thought I knew about family, loyalty, and my own strength. This story actually began 18 months ago, though I didn't realize it at the time. I was scrolling through my usual Wednesday evening routine of ignoring my mother's passive-aggressive texts when she called with her Thanksgiving ultimatum. "Rebecca, we need to discuss Thanksgiving arrangements," she said in that tone she reserves for discussing unpleasant household maintenance. "Your father and I have been talking, and we think it would be best if you sat this year out." I nearly choked on my wine. "Sat it out? Mom, it's Thanksgiving, not a tennis match." "Don't be dramatic," Margaret replied. "It's just that with everything that's happened, your divorce and all, it would be awkward for the extended family. The Hendersons will be there, you know how they talk, and your cousin Janet just got engaged to that lovely corporate lawyer. We don't want your situation casting a shadow over her happiness." My situation? As if my ex-husband Steven cheating on me with his dental hygienist was some kind of lifestyle choice I'd made to inconvenience family gatherings. "Mom, I'm not contagious. Divorce isn't transmitted through turkey sharing. There's no need for sarcasm, Rebecca. We're thinking of what's best for everyone. Maybe you could take the children somewhere nice, make your own traditions." The children? My 8-year-old Lily and 6-year-old Noah, who had been looking forward to seeing their grandparents, who had already made construction paper turkeys specifically for Grandma Margaret's refrigerator. And what exactly am I supposed to tell Lily and Noah? Tell them Mommy wanted to do something special. Just the 3 of you. They're young, they'll understand. No, what they'd understand is that Grandma and Grandpa didn't want them around because Mommy had failed at marriage. "This is unbelievable, Mom. I'm your daughter." "Of course you are, honey. That's exactly why we're trying to protect you from an uncomfortable situation. People will ask questions, want details about the divorce. It's better this way." Better for whom? I wondered. But here's what my mother didn't know yet. The divorce settlement negotiations were nearing completion, and Steven's attempts to hide assets hadn't gone quite as planned. Let me back up and tell you how this whole disaster started, because the timeline matters. 15 months ago, I discovered Steven's affair the way most wives do, through sheer accident mixed with that nagging feeling that something wasn't right. He'd been working late more often, taking weekend conferences that never appeared on any dental association calendars I could find online. His phone had developed a mysterious need to be face down at all times, and his shower routine had suddenly expanded to include cologne application at 8 p.m. The smoking gun came when Lily needed her retainer adjusted, and I decided to surprise Steven with lunch at his office. I'd done this dozens of times before, but that day I wanted it to be spontaneous, something romantic. I walked into the office carrying Thai food from his favorite restaurant, expecting to find him reviewing patient charts. Instead, I found him reviewing his dental hygienist's anatomy with his tongue. Ashley, 23 years old, bleached blonde hair, and apparently very flexible based on the position I found them in on his examination chair. They were so engrossed in their procedure that neither noticed me standing in the doorway. I stood there for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds, watching my husband demonstrate techniques they definitely don't teach in dental school. Then I did something that surprised even me. I didn't scream, didn't throw the food, didn't cause the dramatic scene you see in movies. I simply took out my phone and started recording. "Don't stop on my account," I said calmly, when they finally noticed me. "I'm sure your patients would love to see this level of personal attention." Steven scrambled off Ashley so fast he nearly fell off the chair. "Rebecca, this isn't what it looks like." "Really? Because it looks like you're performing an oral examination without gloves, which violates several health department regulations." That's when Steven's true colors showed. Instead of apologizing, instead of begging forgiveness, he got angry. "If you hadn't shown up unannounced, this wouldn't have happened." "Ah yes, My fault for not scheduling spousal visits in advance. You know what I mean. You've been distant lately. Always tired. Always busy with the kids. A man has needs, Rebecca. And there it was, the classic cheater's playbook. Somehow his inability to keep his dental instruments in his own mouth had become my failing as a wife. You'd think discovering your husband's affair would earn you some sympathy from your family, right? Wrong. When I called my mother immediately after leaving Stephen's office, her response was stunning. "Oh, Rebecca, are you sure it wasn't just a misunderstanding? Unless dental school now teaches French kissing as standard procedure, I'm pretty sure. Don't be crude. These things happen in marriages. The important thing is working through it." My father's reaction was equally disappointing. "Rebecca, I've always respected Stephen. He's a good provider, steady with the children. Every marriage goes through difficult periods. This isn't a difficult period, Dad. This is adultery. That's a very dramatic word. Look, I understand you're hurt, but divorce, that's permanent. That affects your reputation, your children's future." My brother Brian's response was the most infuriating. "Rebecca, you need to be practical here. Stephen makes excellent money, provides health insurance, has an established business. You want to throw that away because of one indiscretion? You've been out of the workforce for years. What are you going to do? Support 2 kids on whatever job you can find?" That was the moment I realized my family saw me not as their daughter and sister, but as a liability. A woman whose value was entirely dependent on her ability to maintain a marriage, regardless of the cost to her dignity. What they didn't realize was that I was already consulting with Victoria Palmer, one of the best divorce attorneys in Connecticut, and Victoria had some very interesting questions about Stephen's financial disclosures. 6 months into the divorce proceedings, I discovered something fascinating about Stephen's business practices. Remember how my family kept emphasizing what a good provider he was? Turns out he was providing much more than any of us knew, just not for his family. Victoria Palmer was the kind of woman who wore power suits like armor and had built her reputation on dismantling cheating husbands' attempts to hide assets. "Rebecca, your husband's been very creative with his bookkeeping. We need to dig much deeper." Stephen had been claiming his dental practice was struggling financially, that he could barely afford reasonable child support payments. But Victoria's forensic accountant found some interesting discrepancies. Equipment purchases that seem inflated, business trips that don't align with any dental conferences, rent payments to a property management company that doesn't exist. He's been funneling money through his business to make it look less profitable than it actually is. The investigation took 8 months of detailed financial analysis, subpoenas, and discovery requests. What we found was systematic financial deception, going back at least 3 years. A separate business bank account that Ashley had access to, property investments hidden in his mother's name, even a small apartment downtown that he claimed was for business storage but was conveniently furnished with a bed and expensive wine collection. When we finally presented our findings in mediation, Stephen's cocky attitude evaporated faster than his claims of financial hardship. His lawyer looked like he'd aged a decade during our presentation. "These accusations are completely unfounded," Stephen sputtered. "I've been completely transparent about my finances." Victoria slid a bank statement across the table. "Then perhaps you can explain this series of transfers totaling $500,000 to accounts in the Cayman Islands." Stephen's face went white. "Those are legitimate business investments." "In what business?" "Because according to the documentation we've obtained, those accounts appear designed specifically to hide marital assets from your wife." The mediation that Stephen thought would result in him paying minimal support and keeping most of his assets turned into a very different conversation. By the end of that long day, I was looking at a settlement that included half of everything he'd tried to hide, plus additional compensation for his attempts at financial fraud. But the real surprise came when Victoria handed me a folder marked Property Assessments. "Your settlement will include enough for a substantial down payment on a very nice house, Rebecca. The kind of house that makes a statement about your independence." Over the following weeks, I spent my time house hunting in Connecticut's more desirable neighborhoods. Not because I needed a mansion, but because I wanted Stephen and my family to understand exactly how wrong they'd been about my prospects as a divorced woman. The house I found was perfect, a contemporary colonial on 2 acres in Fairfield County, 4 bedrooms, 3.5 bathrooms, gourmet kitchen, and a pool that would make the country club envious. The kind of house my family had never imagined I could afford. The price tag was $2.1 million, and with my settlement, I could make it happen. When I made the offer 3 months later, I used my maiden name for the first time in years, Rebecca Mitchell. It felt like putting on clothes that actually fit after wearing someone else's wardrobe too long. The sellers accepted my offer within days, and I was able to close within 6 weeks. As I signed the papers, I couldn't help but smile thinking about Stephen's reaction when he discovered where his hidden assets had ended up. Moving into my new house felt like stepping into a life I'd always been meant to live. The previous owners had impeccable taste, and most of the furniture conveyed with the sale, so within 2 months of closing, I was living in magazine-worthy perfection. Lily and Noah adjusted to their new rooms with the resilience that children possess. Lily claimed the bedroom with the built-in window seat overlooking the garden, while Noah chose the one with the view of the pool. Their excitement about their new home was infectious, and for the first time in over a year, I felt genuinely happy. But the best part wasn't the house itself. It was watching Stephen's face when he came for his first visitation pickup at my new address. He pulled into my circular driveway in his BMW, which suddenly looked modest against the backdrop of my new circumstances. "Quite the upgrade," he said, unable to hide the bitterness in his voice. "The divorce settlement has been very generous," I replied cheerfully. "Thanks for making it possible." He wanted to say more, but the kids were already running toward his car, excited to tell him about their new rooms and the pool they'd been using all summer. That's when I started planning my Thanksgiving celebration. If my family thought I'd be spending the holiday alone feeling sorry for myself, they were about to be very disappointed. I called my friend Jessica first, someone I'd lost touch with during my marriage years but who'd reached out after hearing about my divorce, offering support without judgment. "Jessica, what are your Thanksgiving plans this year?" "The usual family chaos at my sister's house. Why? Want to come to mine instead? I'm hosting a real celebration this year." "You're hosting, Rebecca? That's wonderful. Of course I'll come." One by one, I invited people who deserved to be celebrated. My former college roommate Sarah, who lived in California. My neighbor Mrs. Patterson, who was a 78-year-old widow living alone. My hairdresser Maria, who'd been working through the holiday. The barista from my favorite coffee shop Kevin, who'd been dreading his first Thanksgiving since coming out to his family. And my children's teachers who went above and beyond every day but rarely got proper appreciation. Within 2 weeks, I had 29 confirmed guests for Thanksgiving dinner. People who understood loyalty, kindness, and the importance of chosen family over biological obligation. I hired a caterer, ordered fine wines, and arranged for professional photography. The menu was everything my mother's traditional Thanksgiving wasn't. Heritage turkey with truffle stuffing, maple bourbon glazed ham, lobster mac and cheese, roasted vegetables with exotic spices, and desserts that belonged in a French patisserie. Thanksgiving morning dawned crisp and clear, the kind of perfect November day that makes Connecticut look like a postcard. Lily and Noah helped me set the table, arranging place cards and folding napkins with the seriousness of wedding planners. They'd been so excited about our special Thanksgiving that they'd made handmade decorations and written thank you notes for each guest. "Mommy, this is going to be the best Thanksgiving ever," Lily announced. "I think you're right, sweetheart." The caterers arrived at noon, transforming my kitchen into a professional operation. The photographer came early to capture the preparation process, and soon my house was filled with the sounds and smells of a celebration worth documenting. Guests began arriving at 3, and the energy was immediately different from any family gathering I'd ever attended. These were people who chose to be here, who were grateful for the invitation, who came with joy instead of obligation. Mrs. Patterson arrived first, dressed in her finest outfit and carrying a bottle of wine that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. "My dear, this house is absolutely magnificent," she said, kissing my cheek. "You've created something beautiful here." It was during the afternoon that I met Daniel Carter properly for the first time, though we'd seen each other briefly at school events. He was the father of Grace, who was in Lily's class, and he'd been invited by Mrs. Patterson, who happened to be his neighbor as well. Daniel was a veterinarian with his own practice, a single father raising Grace alone after his divorce 3 years prior. There was something immediately comfortable about him, the way he interacted with the kids, the genuine interest he showed in everyone's stories, the complete lack of judgment or assessment in his eyes when he looked at me. We found ourselves talking in my kitchen while the children played in the backyard, and I realized I was laughing for the first time in months, Not the polite social laugh I'd perfected during my marriage, but genuine, unguarded laughter. "This is a beautiful home, Rebecca," he said. "But I have to say, the best part is watching how happy Lily is. Here. She's got such confidence, such joy. That's not something money can buy." "Thank you," I replied, surprised by how much his observation meant to me. As we gathered around my dining room table, extended to accommodate everyone, I felt a warmth I'd never experienced at any family gathering. When it came time for everyone to share what they were grateful for, the responses were heartfelt and real. Mrs. Patterson was grateful for neighbors who became family. Kevin was grateful for acceptance and love in all its forms. When my turn came, I looked around the table at these wonderful people sharing this incredible meal in my beautiful home. I'm grateful for the courage to build a life that reflects my values instead of other people's expectations. The photographer captured every moment, the laughter over dinner, the children playing together, the genuine connections being made between strangers becoming friends. By evening, we had documentation of what a real celebration looked like. As the last guests were leaving, thanking me profusely for one of the best Thanksgivings they'd ever had, I uploaded the photos to social media, not out of spite but out of genuine pride in what we'd created. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Comments poured in from friends, acquaintances, and even strangers. "This looks amazing. What a beautiful celebration. You're living your best life." But the responses I was most interested in came from the phone calls that started around 9 p.m. First was my brother Brian. "Rebecca, I saw your photos. That looked like quite a celebration. It was wonderful, with people who appreciate being included." Then Lisa called. "Your dinner looked beautiful, very elegant. Thank you." But the call I was waiting for came at nearly 11. My mother, her voice tight with something I couldn't quite identify. "Rebecca, I saw your photographs online. That was quite an elaborate event." "Yes, it was wonderful. We had 29 guests. Everyone had a beautiful time. 29 people, that's more than we had at our dinner. I wanted to make sure everyone who deserved to be celebrated was included." There was a long pause. "I hope you know this display has embarrassed the entire family. The Hendersons saw your photos. Janet's fiancé's parents saw them. Everyone's talking about how you excluded your own family." And there it was. They weren't upset that I'd been excluded. They were upset that I'd succeeded anyway. For the first time in my life, I didn't care what they thought. The aftermath of my Thanksgiving celebration took an unexpected turn in March, when my lawyer Victoria called with urgent news. "Rebecca, we need to talk in person today if possible." Her office felt different this time, more formal, more serious. She had files spread across her desk, and the expression of someone about to deliver life-altering information. "Rebecca, I've been conducting some follow-up investigation into Stephen's financial situation, and I've discovered something significant." "More hidden assets?" "No, something much bigger. Stephen's dental practice isn't just profitable, it's a front for money laundering operations." I stared at her, trying to process what she'd just said. "We're talking about millions of dollars being moved through his business accounts from sources that have nothing to do with dentistry." The forensic accountant noticed irregularities that went beyond simple asset hiding. Payments from shell companies, cash deposits that didn't align with patient records, equipment purchases that exceeded what any dental practice could legitimately need. When we dug deeper with federal assistance, we found a systematic pattern. Victoria slid a folder across her desk filled with bank statements and wire transfer records. "Stephen's been washing money for at least 3 years, possibly longer. The dental practice was perfect cover because cash payments are normal in healthcare. And Ashley, she's heavily involved. Her access to the business accounts wasn't romantic, it was operational." I felt nauseated, not because I still cared about Stephen, but because I realized how close my children and I had come to being implicated in federal crimes. "Victoria, what does this mean for me? For my settlement? Legally, you're protected. The divorce is final. You had no knowledge of illegal activities. But Rebecca, there's more. Federal investigators have been building a case against Stephen for over a year. They need your cooperation. You lived in the house where he conducted business calls. You might have seen or heard things that could help their case." The thought of Stephen taking my children and fleeing to avoid federal prosecution made my blood run cold. I agreed to cooperate immediately. The federal raid on Stephen's dental office happened on a Thursday morning in late March. I watched the news coverage from my living room, seeing my ex-husband led away in handcuffs on every local channel. My phone started ringing immediately. First Victoria confirming everything had proceeded according to plan. Then my mother, who'd apparently seen the news. Rebecca, this is just terrible. Poor Lily and Noah. The children are fine, Mom. They're protected at a friend's house. But the scandal, what will people think? Even in the face of federal crimes, my mother's primary concern was still about appearances. The real shock came that afternoon when Agent Sarah Chen called with an update that changed everything. Mrs. Mitchell, we need to discuss something that's come to light during our investigation. Phone records show regular calls between your mother and Stephen's personal cell phone over the past 4 months. During questioning, Stephen admitted that your mother had been updating him on your social media posts, your new relationship with Daniel, and details about your house and lifestyle. I sat down heavily, trying to process this betrayal on top of everything else. Agent Chen, why would my mother be talking to my ex-husband? According to Stephen, your mother contacted him, initially expressing concern that you were becoming too comfortable with your new situation. She apparently believed that if Stephen could regain custody of the children, you'd be forced to reconcile with your family for support. My own mother had been working with my criminal ex-husband to undermine my custody and independence. After hanging up with Agent Chen, I sat in my beautiful living room and finally understood the full scope of my family's betrayal. They hadn't just abandoned me when I needed support, they'd actively worked against my recovery and independence. That evening, I made a decision that would finalize my independence once and for all. I invited my parents, Brian and Lisa, over for Sunday brunch, telling them I wanted to clear the air after Stephen's arrest. They arrived expecting reconciliation. Instead, they found Daniel, Grace, Lily, Noah, and Agent Chen in my kitchen. Hannah, what's all this? My mother asked. This is the conversation we should have had 18 months ago. Please sit down. Agent Chen stepped forward and explained how Margaret had been providing Stephen with information about my personal life. My father's face went white. Carol, what is she talking about? My mother's careful composure cracked. I was just trying to help. Rebecca was being so stubborn about the family. Mom, Stephen was laundering money for organized crime. He was using information about my life to build a custody case designed to help him flee the country with my children. I didn't know that. You didn't know because you didn't care to know. You were so determined to prove I couldn't survive without this family that you collaborated with a man who'd already proven he couldn't be trusted. I turned to face all of them. I spent 34 years trying to earn love that should have been freely given. I won't spend the rest of my life making the same mistake. My mother made one final attempt. Rebecca, you'll regret this. Family is forever. Someday you'll need us and we won't be there. I looked at this woman who'd taught me about conditional love. Mom, I already needed you and you weren't there. The difference is, now I don't need you anymore. After they left, Daniel found me on my back patio watching Lily, Noah, and Grace play in the pool. How do you feel? He asked. Free, I said, and realized it was completely true. 18 months ago, I'd been a woman defined by other people's expectations. Now I was Rebecca Mitchell, successful, independent, surrounded by people who loved me exactly as I was. The family that had rejected me had inadvertently given me the greatest gift possible. They'd forced me to become the woman I was always meant to be. If this story resonated with you, share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about finding strength when you need it most. Sometimes the family that matters most is the one you choose for yourself.